Life has a way of carrying us into places we never thought we would go. There are moments when a woman feels the weight of being broken, not just by circumstances, but by the very hand of God. It feels like pieces of her heart are scattered, her strength reduced to dust, and her spirit crushed under a burden she cannot carry. Yet, hidden within that breaking is not cruelty but purpose. It is not destruction, it is transformation. For God does not break what he wishes to discard. He breaks what he intends to rebuild into something stronger, purer, and unshakable. When a woman is broken, she begins to release the false strength she once leaned on, the strength of her own will, her own pride, her own control. It is in the breaking that she learns what cannot be taken from her, what cannot be shaken. Her identity, once tied to the opinions of others or the fleeting approval of the world, begins to anchor itself in something higher. God breaks her dependence on the temporary so he can root her in the eternal. In those seasons of breaking, her tears become prayers, and her weakness becomes the place where divine strength enters. A woman who has been broken by God carries within her a fire that cannot be extinguished, because she has learned that survival was not her doing. It was grace. Her scars turn into stories, her silence into wisdom, her pain into power. She is no longer the same as before. She becomes a vessel carved by fire, emptied of pride but filled with light. God breaks her not to leave her in fragments, but to open her heart wide enough to carry others. He breaks her so she can walk into a room and bring comfort to those who are hurting because she knows the language of pain. He breaks her so she becomes a healer, not by title, but by presence. Those who encounter her can feel that she has walked through fire and did not burn, that she has been crushed but did not disappear. And in the end, what emerges is not a broken woman, but a chosen one. A woman refined, transformed, and anointed. She carries within her the quiet strength of surrender and the radiant light of purpose. The breaking was never the end. It was always the beginning. When God allows a woman to be broken, it is not because she is weak, nor because she has failed. It is because he sees in her a strength that is waiting to be refined, a purpose that cannot be fulfilled as long as she leans on her own will. Often, we build our lives around illusions of strength, our ability to endure, our determination to succeed, our control over how things should go. But this kind of strength is fragile. It crumbles when life storms become too heavy, when disappointments pierce too deep, when betrayal cuts through the heart. And so, in his wisdom, God steps in and begins to strip away every false foundation she has built her confidence upon. This breaking feels like loss. It feels like prayers unanswered and doors closed. It feels like standing in front of dreams that once looked certain, now shattered into pieces. Yet this breaking is not meant to destroy her, it is meant to awaken her. In the cracks of her soul, she begins to see that her worth was never meant to be tied to achievements, to relationships, or to the approval of others. In the silence of her brokenness, she discovers a truth more powerful than anything she ever held on to, that she was never meant to carry the weight of her life alone. A woman who is broken by God begins to let go of the illusion that her strength is enough. She stops striving to control what was never hers to control, and in that release something new enters her spirit. She begins to sense that there is a greater hand holding her, even in the middle of her tears. She realizes that being emptied is not the end, but the space where something greater can be poured in. Every tear becomes a surrender. Every unanswered question becomes a reminder that she was not abandoned, but being redirected. Her false strength is exchanged for something unshakable, a strength that no failure can steal, no betrayal can destroy, no storm can wash away. This is not the strength of her own will, but the strength that comes from being held by something eternal. And in this place of breaking, she becomes more than she was before. The pieces that once scattered her identity are gathered, not by her hands, but by the hands of the one who always knew her true design. She is no longer defined by how hard she can fight on her own, but by how deeply she has surrendered. In losing the strength she thought she needed, she finds the strength that cannot be broken. When God allows a woman to walk through breaking, he is not simply taking away. He is preparing the soil of her heart for something she could never carry without transformation. What looks like loss on the outside is often preparation on the inside. In moments of breaking, he removes the noise that has distracted her, the attachments that kept her bound, the illusions that kept her small. It is not cruelty but mercy, for without this stripping away, she might remain tied to things that were never meant to hold her destiny. A woman cannot step into the fullness of her calling while still clinging to what limits her. To be used in a greater way, her heart must be emptied of pride, emptied of fear, emptied of the belief that she is in control. This is why the breaking comes, not to punish, but to purify, and purification always feels painful because it burns away what is false to reveal what is real. God takes her through seasons where she questions everything, where even her own reflection feels unfamiliar. But in that very wilderness, she learns that the foundation she stands upon must not be built on shifting sand, but on something eternal and unshakable. Preparation often looks like isolation. People she once relied on seem distant. Opportunities she once dreamed of seem blocked. Even her own plans collapse in front of her. Yet all of this is necessary, because the woman he intends to use cannot be dependent on the approval or validation of others. She must learn to walk by faith, to trust unseen hands guiding her steps, to stand strong even when no one applauds her journey. In this quiet shaping, her character deepens, her patience grows, her spirit sharpens. When the breaking is seen through eyes of surrender, the woman begins to recognize the gift hidden inside it. She realizes that she is being carved into something greater than she could have imagined. The pieces of her old life fall away, and in their place a vessel is being formed, one that is ready to carry a weight of purpose she could not have held before. The breaking is not the end but the beginning. It is the preparation for the season when her voice will carry power, her hands will bring healing, her presence will shine light into darkness. The breaking makes her ready not only to receive the blessing, but to sustain it. For blessings without preparation can crush a soul, but blessings after breaking build a life that stands unshaken. Through the fire of her trials, she becomes refined like gold, not just shining on the surface, but pure at the core. There comes a moment in the journey of every woman chosen for a higher purpose, when God allows her heart to feel the weight of wounds so deep that she cannot hide them behind a smile or cover them with strength. These wounds are not meant to destroy her, but to open places within her that cannot be opened by comfort. Pain has a way of reaching where nothing else can, teaching lessons that joy alone cannot reveal. It is through these wounds that compassion is birthed, empathy is formed, and the ability to carry others is awakened. Without being broken herself, she could not carry the brokenness of others. Without being humbled, she could not lift others with true grace. When a woman is broken, she begins to see life not from the mountaintop of pride, but from the valley where tears water the ground. And it is in that valley where she finds the voices of the hurting, the forgotten, the ones who feel unseen. In her brokenness, she learns to speak not from the surface, but from the soul. Her words gain weight because they are not rehearsed lines. They are born from her lived experience, from nights of silence where she cried to the heavens and mornings where she had to rise again despite the heaviness in her chest. The breaking becomes the place where her faith is not only tested but rebuilt. It is easy to believe when everything flows smoothly, when doors open effortlessly, when relationships stay steady. But in the breaking, belief becomes raw, stripped of performance, stripped of appearance. She learns to trust not because she sees the way forward, but because she chooses to hold onto the unseen hand that guides her. Every step becomes an act of courage, every breath an act of worship, every tear a prayer. Through this refining, she is given a new vision, not just of who she is, but of who she is becoming. What once defined her no longer holds power. Old identities shatter, the one who was overlooked, the one who felt unworthy, the one who doubted her worth. In their place rises someone new, someone who carries scars not as shame, but as proof of survival. These scars become her testimony, her silent sermon, her strength clothed in vulnerability. And when the time comes for her to step into her calling, it is not her perfection that will touch lives but her scars. It will not be her polished strength, but her healed wounds that give her the authority to speak life into others. What once broke her becomes the very thing that empowers her to lift others from their darkness. The pain that once silenced her becomes the echo that carries healing to those who thought they were alone. This is the paradox of breaking. It is in being undone that she is made whole, and in being wounded that she becomes the vessel of restoration. When God breaks a woman he intends to use, he is not simply removing what is weak. He is reshaping her entire understanding of strength. Many people confuse strength with the ability to endure without showing pain, to keep moving while pretending nothing hurts. But when the breaking comes, that illusion crumbles. She can no longer hide behind masks or walls. She can no longer survive by relying on her own will alone. And in that stripping, in that humbling, she discovers that true strength is not found in pretending to be unshaken, but in learning to lean on something greater than herself. The breaking teaches her dependence. She begins to see that self-reliance has limits, that no matter how determined or capable she is, there are battles she cannot fight alone. In the silence of her struggle, she learns to call upon the one who never leaves, who hears the cry no one else notices. Her breaking becomes the soil where surrender grows, where the roots of trust sink deeper. And as she lets go of her need to control, as she releases her grip on what she thought she needed, she discovers a strength that is not fleeting but eternal. It is in those moments of surrender that her spirit becomes unshakable, because when you have walked through nights that seemed endless, when you have faced storms that threatened to consume you, and still you rise with breath in your lungs and faith in your heart, you are no longer easily moved. The world cannot scare you with shadows when you have already walked through the valley of despair. People cannot destroy you with words when you have already been broken and rebuilt by hands far greater than theirs. This strength is not loud, not boastful. It is quiet, steady, and deeply rooted, and from this strength emerges clarity. She begins to understand that the breaking was not a punishment but a preparation. Every tear carved wisdom into her heart. Every fall taught her the rhythm of rising. Every silence trained her to listen with ears attuned to more than human voices. This clarity allows her to walk into rooms without needing approval, to face challenges without fear, to embrace her calling without hesitation. Because she knows she is not standing on her own, she is carried by the one who chose her, who broke her, who rebuilt her for a purpose larger than herself. So the strength she now carries is not for her alone. It is for those who will encounter her story, who will see her resilience and find hope for their own. Her presence becomes a living reminder that being broken does not mean being defeated. It means being refined, being prepared, being strengthened in ways the world cannot explain. And it is this strength, born in breaking, refined in surrender, revealed in resilience, that marks her as someone God can use to move mountains in the lives of others. When God breaks the woman he intends to use, it is never so that she remains shattered. Breaking is not the conclusion. It is the foundation for rebuilding into something extraordinary. What emerges after the breaking is not a weaker version of her, but a refined vessel, purified of pride, fear, and illusions. She becomes someone who knows pain, but more importantly, someone who knows healing. And because she has walked through the fire and survived the storm, her life becomes a testimony that others can see, touch, and be moved by. She is no longer just a woman with a story. She becomes the story that God uses to awaken faith in those who feel forgotten. Her scars do not disqualify her, they qualify her. Every broken piece that was mended by God carries a light that speaks louder than perfection ever could. People may not listen to someone who has never known struggle, but they will lean in closely to someone who has been where they are, who has felt the weight of despair and still carries hope. That hope, born of breaking, is contagious. It spreads silently but powerfully, reminding others that if she could rise from the ashes, they too can rise. And in this way, her life becomes a channel, a bridge through which God pours strength and faith into others. Rebuilding also brings humility. She no longer walks with arrogance or the need to prove herself, because she understands that all she is and all she carries is a gift. She knows that without the breaking, she would not have the depth, the compassion, or the resilience she now holds. And this humility makes her approachable, relatable, human. It allows her to embrace others not from a place of superiority, but from shared humanity. In her presence, people feel seen, understood, and less alone. This is the quiet power of a rebuilt spirit. It uplifts without effort, it inspires without demanding, it heals simply by existing. But perhaps the most powerful outcome of her rebuilding is that she becomes unafraid of being used by God. She no longer resists his call, no longer clings to her old life, because she has already tasted the sweetness of surrender. Her trust is not fragile anymore, it is steady, unshaken. She steps into her purpose with courage, knowing that whatever comes, the same God who broke her is the same God who remade her. And because of this, she becomes unstoppable, not because of her own strength, but because she has learned to walk in the strength that flows through her from above. The breaking, then, was never meant to end her. It was meant to shape her into a vessel wide enough, deep enough, and strong enough to carry the weight of the blessings and the responsibility that God had always intended for her life. She becomes both a survivor and a servant, both a warrior and a witness, someone who walks not only in her own power, but in divine power that touches every soul she encounters. Life has a way of convincing us that brokenness is the end, that when something falls apart, it cannot be restored. But when God is involved, the breaking is never destruction. It is transformation. The pieces of pain become the very material he uses to build something greater, something stronger, something more radiant than before. Every wound becomes a doorway for light. Every scar becomes a story of survival. Every tear becomes a seed of wisdom. And when the woman who once thought she was too shattered to stand rises again, she carries within her a power that no storm can erase. She is no longer defined by what she lost, but by the strength of what she found in her breaking. That strength is not just for herself. It is for every soul she will touch, for every life she will inspire, for every heart she will remind that even in the breaking, God is building a masterpiece.